hey, before you silence your cell phones, do this. Get on the phone, call, text, wherever you can, get them down here to listen to this talk. So Coach Stiggins always talks about the highlight of the conference. This is the highlight of the conference right here, I promise you not. So get your people down here. Let's get this place filled up. Let's give Coach John your undivided attention. I'm going to deviate from the CSCCA intro they gave me, give a quick personal intro, and then we're going to get this thing going because he's impatient, I'm impatient, I'm ready to hear, I'm ready to learn. So just want to never delay gratitude as well. I want to thank Coach John for his mentorship. He and I have known each other, talk, text, phone call for a number of years now. First chance I've ever met the guy, though. So in person, everything is all cracked up to be. Chuck and Becky, you guys, make sure you hug their necks. Take care of those guys. We're the membership of the CSCCA. Those guys are the keepers, and make sure you take care of those guys. They're really special. But if you're a coach, if you're a parent, a brother, whoever it may be, son, anything this guy puts out there, you can read, you can learn. The best thing I've ever read, because I have a daughter, he has 2 daughters, is the grad to dad. So take a look at some of the things you see online with Coach John. Give this guy a huge round of applause because it's great to be here, great to introduce him, and it's great to meet you, Coach.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Hey, good morning. It's nice to see so many empty chairs this morning. But listen, on this slide, you have my phone number and you have my email. If you've ever emailed me, I email you right back. Is that true? For those of you who email me? If you call, I call you right back, okay? I have a huge debt to people in the strength and conditioning field. I was a 118-pound freshman middle linebacker, and it's because of people like you that all my education has been paid for because I can throw the discus far. But without, seriously, people like yourselves, I would never, who knows how it would have ended up. So today is, I'm happy Chuck asked me to talk about Easy Strength. Easy Strength was a book that Pavel and I wrote years ago. The term comes from Steve Bacardi. It's the idea of getting as strong as you physically can the easiest way you can. Of all the talks I give, this is the one, I don't know if I'd have picked this one, but this is what was asked for. But my whole coaching philosophy can be summarized really by this great book called Freakonomics. I have this belief, I have to be careful how I say this, that there's 3 things in life. I call them the 3 F's, okay? Finance, fitness, and relationships. Thank you for getting the joke. Most people don't. And it's funny because everybody wants the quick answer to all of them. The best strength coach you can read is Warren Buffett. Everything you know in the weight room can be learned in the world of finance and good relationships. But everyone wants the easy ticket, the quick way, and there is no overnight route to success in anything in life. Yes, you can become a celebrity, but those celebrities don't bench 400. So this book, Think Like a Freak, might be one of the best coaching books I've ever seen. Principle number 1 in the book is you got to know what to measure. And I've always felt as a strength coach, it's the easiest job in the world. If my athletes get stronger, I'm right. It's that simple. Now, how it applies to the field, now that's a whole different discussion. As a track and field coach, by the way, always listen to track and field coaches because they have the measurement is simple. Did I throw farther? If I threw farther, I'm right, no matter what we did. If I get my athletes to run faster, a quality athlete running faster, I love it when I go online and someone who runs a 6'4", 40 gets themselves down to a 5'7", and I'm supposed to pay attention. Or a 13-inch vertical jump and we get them up to an 18-inch vertical jump. I'm not exactly going to buy the book. That was mean, and I'm sorry. It's too early for me. Point number 2 from Freakonomics. Conventional wisdom is always wrong. Ever since Arnold's book, The Education of a Bodybuilder, which is destroying you, by the way, and you don't even know it, most of you young kids, came out when I was a senior in high school, freshman in college. This is where Frankenstein training comes from. Arm day, leg day. If you've ever had a liver parasite or a good case of Montezuma's Revenge, you will know that even though it's, even though it's affecting one part of your body, it's still not a good thing to squat deep that day, okay? When parents ask me, are the boys doing cardio? I always say, no, we're working on the lymphatic system today. Always tell people you're training the lymphatic system, because very few people know what that is. And so when you say, yeah, this is for the lymphatic system, yeah, we're really trying to up our lymphatic system training this year. Oh yeah, that's really something. And then they'll walk away and leave you alone for the rest of practice. The final one there is important too. Don't fear the obvious. If you want to get stronger, lift weights. Honestly, I could leave right now. Because this is what's been lost in the field of fitness in the last 40 years. Fear of the obvious. I had a chance this morning to watch television in a hotel room, and nearly every other station was some kind of fitness product, selling 90 days to the best shape of your life, selling overnight, selling quick answers. There was one for a pill you would take that would change your life. That's the quick answers. That's stuff I lived my whole life fighting against. Is there an easy way to get strong? Yes. Here are the principles behind it. One, you need to lift heavy, do the fundamental movements, keep your reps and sets low, stop your sets when you're tired or fatigued. Don't struggle. I was talking last night. I've had surgeries on every joint in my body except for my ankles, so if I die tonight, my ankles are really in good shape. Please come up and get them. I have never been injured on a successful attempt. I've only been hurt on misses. Every time you miss in the weight room, I believe it breaks down your nervous system. It teaches you to do things wrong. I feel very strongly about that. And then finally, never miss a rep, keep plenty in the tank, and keep coming back. The problem with the easy strength approach is a lot of you have never heard of it because bodybuilding and anabolic steroids have taken over our field. And I really believe what I just said. We're going to talk about some things today that are much older than the anabolic era. First, this kind of training, the easy strength, has been around a long time. Most people who've done the program were flat out shocked about it when they did it. In my own case, in 2003, I was 46 years old. I added 15 pounds to my lifetime best in the incline bench press. I couldn't imagine, I didn't know how easy it could be to get strong. It's excellent for non-performance enhancing drug use athletes. I'm strong about PEDs, guys. I'm in a study, a university's doing a study on top 10 throwers from 1964 to 1979. My classes are dead pools. I've buried so many of my friends from, and of course it's never, everybody I know, I guess, was born with these things, but really, it kills people long term. You can disagree with me, that's fine. I was at a workshop one time where one of our discus guys told our junior athletes, I was supposed to not talk about steroids, that he says, and then he goes on to say, I took them, they never bothered me, but I'm not supposed to say anything, and they helped me throw farther. Oh, that's a good mission for 19-year-olds to hear, right? That's a good thing, right? I'm so anti-drug, I can't tell you. And I hope you are too. And if you're not, I don't think I want you working with my children in a high school or college situation. That's enough of that. I'll stop on that. Easy strength is great for something we call quadrant 3 athletes. That's track and field, and that's almost everybody else. We'll get to that in a minute. And it's very good for time-friendly people who are time-pressed. Some of the problems with what I'm about to talk about is Arnold Schwarzenegger didn't do it. Mr. Universe didn't do it. This kind of training disappeared a while ago. But the funny thing about easy strength is it works. And how do we know it works? There's a very insightful show called South Park. It's very helpful for coaches to know. One of the early episodes has a group called the Underpants Gnomes. And their idea is to steal underpants, and then they wave their hands like this, and to make a profit. The reason I found that was funny was when I was in college at Utah State, Professor Durkee was asked one time, how does the invisible hand of economics works? And he says, well, you know, you start making pencils and you make money. Dan, how do you get stronger in the weight room? Well, you go in the weight room, you lift weights, and you get stronger. How do you build mass? Oh, you go in the weight room, then you go in the cafeteria, and you get bigger. Well, I think we could be a little bit more scientific than that. Oh, sorry, wrong button. This is how I prove things in my own training, in our training. I use the standing long jump and the farmer walk test to find out how we are doing as a system. One of the hardest things I think for coaches is it's a rare month where some kind of new assessment doesn't come out. I'm certified to do the FMS. And when you tell an athlete, Ethan, you're 14, they look right back at you and say, what does that mean? And your response is, I don't know, I did a 4-day workshop on it, but you're a 14. The reason I do these two tests is you can't cheat these two tests. The standing long jump and the farmer walk with body weight. I give you the numbers there for what we use. My belief is this: if I put you on a 6-week program, at the end of 6 weeks, your standing long jump improves and your ability to farmer walk improves, I can assume that your explosion and your work capacity has gone up. These are the two tests I always use and I've used for a long time with everything we do. The tests take just minutes to do. If you do a 6-week program and the standing long jump comes back and the farmer walk numbers go down, stop doing it. It's a bad program. So one of the things I think we miss when we test in our field is we don't assess the programs. If I'm a college coach and I get a 17-year-old boy who went to prom last fall and have him lift weights for a couple of years in a good progressive program, I'd better expect to see his engine bigger. He should look better. We can test with their standing long jump whether we actually had an impact on the whole system. My knock on vertical, by the way, I like vertical jumps too, but it's always hard to see true improvement. So this is what you might see. That actually, if you have a 320-pound offensive lineman, that improvement in a vertical jump is probably pretty big. It's just really hard to see. Whereas you might see 6 or 7 or 8 inches in the standing long jump. That's why I like that test over verticals. So if I have to prove easy strength, this is what I do. I go to a thing called epistemology, which is how do you know what you know? And epistemology is a great, and it's a big part of what I do for a living. I have a little joke there. It says, we know that lifting makes us stronger. How? I don't know. But the standard methods of epistemology are authority. I do what Dave Davis and Tom Fahey do. You pick up the phone and you ask the best and brightest in your field, what are you doing? I know this. You got Ethan right up here. I know that if you call Ethan and say, can I come down to Wake Forest and see what you're doing? He'll say yes, right? Absolutely. In this field, that's the thing I like about, Earl Nightingale told us that. As you go up higher and higher and higher in any organization, the people at the top are the most warm and the most open. It's the people down here, the bottom feeders that are always trying to get, step on people on the way to the top. Ask the best and the brightest what they're doing. Ask the best athletes what they're doing. Folks, that's authority and that's deductive logic right there. Dave Davis asked the best shot putters in the world, what do you guys do? And they did a combination of the power lifts and the Olympic lifts. This is from 1974. Tom Fahey did this famously with several studies. He picked up the phone and he asked them. The other thing you got to keep in mind too, and this is a small thing, but it's important, you also have to remember what works best in your situation. I love going to big powerhouse universities and going to their weight room. They use their weight room to recruit. But if you're at a Division III or Division II school, it's going to be really hard to have a $100 million weight facility. So sometimes you also have to keep in mind, I love what they're doing, but my budget's a little different. On the science side, it's fascinating that most of the things we know about weightlifting come from the 1940s. It comes from the work of the book Progressive Resistance Exercise by DeLorme and Watkins. If you haven't read it, you really should, because it is the root of what we do. DeLorme and Watkins were working with guys who were injured in World War II, guys who had limbs blown off, but they were also working with polio victims. And they found out in their work that for basic power and basic hypertrophy, you need about 20 to 30 good reps in a workout. That's 3 sets of 8, 5 sets of 5, and most of you recognize those workouts. A lot of people have studied on top of them, but it's going to be hard to find the volume of people they ever worked with. It's interesting. My mother lost brothers in World War II, had 3 sons go to Vietnam, 2 are disabled. She didn't fear war. She feared polio. I've always found that amazing to think back. But polio was such a terrible disease, a muscle-wasting disease, but DeLorme and Watkins found out that by using progressive resistance, they could bring someone back from being basically an invalid to being part of our society again by lifting weights. Those are the guys who took weightlifting from kind of the back rooms into what it is today. But it's interesting at the same time, Yonda, the great physical therapist, was studying the effects on his own body from polio. Many people don't know that Yonda had polio. And he discovered that as we age, certain muscles tighten. And the muscles are the pecs, the biceps, the hip flexors, and the hamstrings. I just turned myself into an extremely old man. What do your athletes like to do when you're not around? Bench press, curl, leg press. They like to turn themselves into very old men. He argued you need to stretch those. And the muscles that are weakening as we age are the glutes, sadly, the deltoids, the triceps, and the ab wall. We've known this for over 60 years, and yet we still have a hard time pushing our people past that. You know, I'll be 60 next year, which amazes me to think about. I feel like there's an old man in the mirror every morning. But every one of those is absolutely true. As I've aged, the need for me to stretch here has become more and more important every day. I have a total hip replacement, and I got what Yonda called gluteal amnesia. I couldn't make my left butt cheek flex, and that was a national shame. It's tough at 8 a.m. in the morning to get people happy. I tell you, you guys are rough. But this information, if you don't have this book, The Physiology of Strength, you'll email me and I'll send you a copy of it. This is a book with the research comes from the 1940s. This is all German research. But what's fascinating is this. Oh, by the way, this is research from the 1940s and 50s. None of this is brand new, and yet we've thrown all this out. The second point is the one I really want to bring you to. If you're teaching young girl shot putters, young female shot putters, you'll notice that they can glide on day one. Because females can be 80% as strong as males here. But the interesting thing when you first have a female throw the shot is that this doesn't happen right. Well, Heidegger and the gang predicted this years ago that the female extensor muscles only get as 55% as strong. So if you're working a female athlete, there are certain movements you need more time to work on. And that's why I think this research is so important. They need a lot more time here to work on than a typical male. This one, the third point, strength peaks in the late 20s and maintains for a long time. My personal records in the weight room are all from my mid-30s. Things got easier in my mid-30s. I snatched 314 at age 34. I cleaned 402 at age 34. If I had had the facilities and the time in my 20s, I could have been stronger. But here's the other thing, folks. I have been noticing this over time. Yesterday, I deadlift 190 kilos, so I get my name, so I get that free Alico bar. 190 kilos is much heavier than it was 3 decades ago. I don't know what happened to gravity in this time. That was a joke. If you go to your housewives or watch Dr. Oz, they'll recommend vitamin D. That groundbreaking research is over 70 years old. And of course, the last thing that the Germans noticed, that by adding a little bit of extra testosterone, people seem to improve. As much as I like science, I think the best thing a strength coach can offer the world is what we call the glass. The bigger, we consider in the school I'm from, that strength is a glass. And everything that goes in that glass, everything else is the liquid. So the bigger your glass, the more liquid you can hold. I've been out with women who can do 5 pull-ups and, do some serious lifting in the weight room. When they eat, they can eat big meals because they have a big glass. They don't have to worry about counting every calorie. If you have someone who's kind of weak, you might need to count more calories because their glass just isn't big enough. Our job in the weight room is to give you the biggest glass you have so all those other qualities can be lopped on top of it. If I can teach you in the weight room to be very strong in this position here by a number of different reasons, if I'm going to have you change directions on the field of play, you're going to have a much larger glass to do that with. And that's why the weight room is so important. That's why the weight room is so important. These are my 2 basic principles for what we do in the weight room. I think strength training for lean body mass and joint mobility trumps everything else you can do. And I mean that about joint mobility. I think exercises like the overhead squat, the dip, the deep back squat, the back squat family, the squat family, do more for joint mobility than all the yoga and all the other stuff in the world. I've seen it with myself, I see it with my own athletes and all my clients. When I work with older clients, people over 70 years of age, what they lack, their problem is, yes, mobility, but it's because of strength first. As soon as we get them strong, their mobility seems to come along. And of course, the second thing, and I believe this, the mastery of the fundamental human movements is fundamental. Yonda would support that. These are the fundamental human movements, at least the way I call them in my weight room. The push, the pull, the hinge, the squat, loaded carries, which is your whole family of farmer walks, prowlers, truck pushing and all that, and what we call the 6th movement. You'll notice that 3 of them are glutes. Glutes, glutes, glutes is what I would say. You are literally sitting on a seat of power right now. Glutes are the engine of excellence in sports. For the 6th movement, we break it up into 2 parts. The first I call integration with the horizontal environment. Ethan and I were talking about it just before we started today. I am a great believer that as strength coaches, we need to get people on the ground. You can do that with something as simple as a Turkish get-up. You can get that, there's a football thing called grass drills. So I think the key to success in football is when you get knocked down, you get back up. I think that's the secret. You can have all these X's and O's on a wall, but if he has to knock me down 6 times on a play, that whole X and O thing just got knocked out the window. I also believe that tumbling is one of the most important things you can do and teach your athletes. I teach my athletes forward rolls, shoulder rolls, cartwheels, the whole family of bear crawls and all that. Here's why. At my age, at the age I'm at right now, 28,000 Americans die in fall and fall-related injuries every year. Telling Ethan, 3 weeks ago they found cancer on me. At my age, it's better for me to have cancer, statistically, than it is for me to fall off this and break a joint. It's remarkable what I just told you. If you take peanut butter to a preschool, they'll call the SWAT team on you. And yet most people don't know how to fall. I went to a school one year, and they were having a terrible problem with shoulder injuries. And what we did is we looked at the videos of why they were getting shoulder injuries. When the running backs were getting tackled, they were trying to stab the earth to stop themselves from going down. and their shoulders are ending up behind them. So I taught them to tumble, and miraculously the shoulder injuries ended. You are going to fall in life. You better be comfortable when you get there. Also, bear crawls are a great workout. We do this one where you deadlift and bear crawl away. It's a great one for football. The other one is the vertical environment, brachiating. If you're not doing things like monkey bars or some kind of hanging, you really need to. We were talking yesterday to Matt, I don't know where he is, but we had him do the test. The way I test pull-ups now is you hold for 30 seconds, do one pull-up, hold for 30 seconds, do two pull-ups, hold for 30 seconds, 3 pull-ups. If you get to 4, don't worry, pull-ups aren't your problem. And the reason we're doing that is because with many of our males now, they can do this on a pull-up, but they can't do this. They're so locked up. And this exposes that issue. So any kind of brachiating, working in the vertical environment. Here's the deal, folks. If something bad happens today, something bad happens in here, you'll be very glad you either know how to bear crawl or climb up high. If the zombies show up, and I know some of the younger coaches here, that's what you think is going to happen. So, now I went in great depth on this in my book, Intervention. So if you have the fundamental human movements, this is how I expand them into an organized pattern. You have this in your notes, so you don't have to worry about copying them down. But what I've done is, here's your basic human movements. Those are the basic patterns that we do. If I'm working with an aged athlete, a beat-up guy, a 32-year-old NFL guy, very often they can't do little things like straighten their arms because they had their triceps torn off or something. So we'll do things like planks to keep them playing a little longer. If you can hold the plank movement, then we move up to the slower movements, the grind family, traditional strength training. I like to test things with symmetry first. I got to tell you, that's a winner. That one-arm bench press, the hands-free, I got that from Ethan about 100 years ago, is one of the best exercises I know for people who throw, who strike, who kick, who box, because it's such a great anti-rotation movement. If you can handle that, then we move to the faster work, push presses, swings, the Litvinov family, which is combining a squat with a sprint, for example. And if they can handle all that, that's when I move into the Olympic lifts. So what I'm trying to do when I'm looking at a training program is I'm always trying to make sure that the exercise matches the injury profile and the weaknesses of the athlete, the joint weaknesses of the athlete. This is an attempt at humor. The world's fastest personalized program, whatever they're not doing, do. I have made my living on that phrase. I will go to your school and or your place, and all I'm gonna do is look for your gaps. I'm gonna look for your gaps. I think I'm what's called a principles-based teacher and coach. The word principle is a word you need to memorize and know. Primus, means first. Simple is from the same root as capture. The word principle literally means to take first. I've got 2 principles for strength coaches. Number 1, are your athletes up to standard? Whatever that standard is. You know, if you're a college football coach, you sometimes hear the numbers 3, 4, 5. Ethan, is that still true? The 300-pound clean, 400 bench, 500 squat? Okay, if you have 93 football players who can all clean 300, bench 400, squat 500, you can walk up to the head football coach and say, ain't my problem. Of course, they'll love to hear that. Their egos aren't big. One year I sent 62 athletes up to our varsity football coach who could clean 205, front squat 205, and bench 205 at the high school level. 62. We lose any football games that year, my fault. Because your scout team is probably stronger than any of your opponents. That's standards. Gaps are those things you're not doing, and that's why you need a friend. That's why you need someone you can trust. That's why you need a mentor or some kind of relationship with someone in the field who will look at your program, look at your facility, look at what you're doing and saying, hey, I love all this. Why did you drop? And it's always something funny that you drop. You know why you dropped it? Because it was working so well, you stopped doing it. Hey, why'd you drop deep squatting? Oh, our kids were getting so big and strong that we stopped doing it. Because we started doing this other thing I saw at a conference this guy was talking about. So you're doing what? We're doing dynamic monkey rolls. Why? Well, because I saw this. It was really cool. Am I the only person who's ever fallen for that one? You come back and about 3 weeks later, your athletes go, why aren't we doing this anymore? Yeah, I don't know. Because I was at this conference and it looked really cool and this guy did it. You know, I make my living on telling people this. If you can just get a typical athlete just to goblet squat deep and do farmer walks, most of what you're trying to do gets done. All right. That was the overview. That was the overview. I want to make sure you understood some basic principles. Now let's get into what I want to talk about. Is there an easy way to get strong? Yes. Lift heavy, don't fail, do the fundamental human movements, keep the reps and sets very reasonable, you'll get stronger. I gotta tell you, I've been reading, I have just about every strength and health magazine ever done, and I'm a big fan of those guys up there. That's George Hackenschmidt on the on the second tier, far right, and that's Percy Cerutty. Hackenschmidt and Cerutty was a track and field coach in Australia. Hack, of course, gave us the hack squat. He's a German strongman. They started having a series of letters back and forth that we still have. They're at the Stark Center over there in Austin. Cerutty believed two things that will make a runner run better. They should lift weights and they should sprint up hills. It's still true today. But you know who won't do it? Your runners. Because they believe that carb loading with sugar pops in the morning is going to undo and stretch their feet for 4 hours. No. Cerutty was great. He had world champions, Olympic champions, world record holders. He believed this, that a marathoner should bench body weight and deadlift double body weight. And you can't get your distance kids to lift weights. But they'll sure eat carb. They'll carb load. So this stuff has been around a long time. Cerutty had this very simple template. This is from the late 50s, early 1960s. You should deadlift. You should do some kind of press. Cerutty liked this thing, this new lift called the bench press. You guys know that the bench press is probably one of the newest of our lifts, right? Is there a Notre Dame coach here by any chance? If there is, Father Lang at Notre Dame, he's the one who brought the bench press mainstream. He had a little standard. How many of you remember early days of bench press before standards and you had to pick up the weight to your friend? Does anyone? There we go. Good to see a hand right there. He did this exercise called the cheat curl, which is still we call it the power curl in our gym, but I still use the cheat curl as a basic way of teaching the Olympic lifts. It's a curl grip power clean. Some kind of ab exercise. He had them do sit-ups. I had people do ab wheels. And you kept the reps about 2 sets of 5. Now, the reason I even bring that up is that this showed back up in my life in 2003 when Pavel, some of you would know him from the kettlebells, we were at a meeting down with Charles Staley, and I was trying to become the oldest person ever to qualify for the Olympic trials. And he told me, for the next 40 days, pick 5 exercises, never get tired, never worry about the load, go totally by feel. On workout number 22, now I live in Utah, so you guys wouldn't understand what the weather, when I say weather, what that means. So when I train in my garage, it's below 0. By myself with my wife's brand new Mazda 6 right there, so if I miss, I also get divorced. By myself, no spotters, I added 15 pounds and did a double with my lifetime best on the incline, and it felt so easy. This is when I became sold on the easy strength system. The idea is this, is that you go in, you make every lift, and you come back to play another day. It doesn't sound right to you, and I know that, because I pushed away this good advice first. It worked. What is, oh, by the way, I don't know what an erective is, but suddenly that's what I seem to have on my, so make sure you do your erectives in your workouts. When you work with discus throwers by time, 80% of their time should be throwing the discus. 10% of their time doing easy strength, and we rest in our facility with flexibility and mobility work between sets. So if you're gonna do a set of inclines, you'll do hip stretchers between. I don't believe in rest periods for athletes. I never have. There's not, maybe in the Super Bowl there's defined rest periods. It seems to me this year, after every play there's a commercial. I don't know if you noticed that. So, but the rest of us, there's no rest there's really no rest divine. So I like people to go from thing to thing to thing. So when I'm training athletes, first thing I want you to do is think this way. Throwers throw, sprinters sprint, hurdlers hurdle, jumpers jump. The qualities you need for playing American football should be gained out there playing American football. The jumpers should come into me and not have to jump. They should have been doing their jumping out there at the track. It breaks my heart when I see these off-season volleyball girls doing all these plyos and they land with their knees together 40 and 50 and 60 times in a row. That's gonna be real hard to undo. What's great about an easy strength approach is it gives you more time to practice the sport. I believe as a discus thrower, and this is nothing new, you need to throw 10,000 times a year. That's 1,000 times a month, that's 250 times a week. If you're lifting weights 6 hours a day, I don't know when you're gonna get the time in to throw. The best swimmers swim more than the worst swimmers. The longer you're on a bicycle, the better bicycle rider you become. We all know this. And yet we waste hours and hours of time in the weight room every day. And I mean waste. One small thing I'll tell you as a hint, for those of you who take one thing away, is never program bench press or curls for your male athletes. Why? Because they will do them anyway. Never, and with my female athletes, I would never program ab work and stretching because they'll always do it. I find that fascinating. Coaching high school track, girl ran 3 400-meter sprints, threw up after one of them. At the end of the workout, I look over and she's doing crunches. And I'm thinking, I don't know what else I can coach you on. I'm not sure how the crunches were gonna make a difference. For easy strength, pick the fundamental human movements. Pick a big global lift. In the press family, pick a global pull. I will warn you about picking a big squat. I've done it, but it's very difficult for recovery. As an Olympic lift, you can get away with it. But if you're coaching an athlete and you're gonna try to do this program, which is, you're gonna do almost 40 of the exact same workout back to back to back, 40, squatting 5 days a week is fine for an Olympic lifter, and many of you probably done it, but it's real hard to squat 5 days a week and be a wide receiver at the same time, okay? It's hard to squat 5 days a week and be a volleyball player. It just seems to be a hard thing to combine. Reps and sets, we use what's called the rule of 10. 3 sets of 3, 5 sets of 2, 2 sets of 5. For hypertrophy, we know that the reps should be about 20 to 30. But for strength, we follow the rule of 10. What's weird about this is I went back through my diaries. I've been keeping my strength diary since 1971. And I discovered at the high points of my career that I probably could only get 6 heavy snatches and 6 heavy cleans in a workout because the load was so heavy. So I found this early in my career. I just didn't have the wisdom to listen to the written paper right in front of me. To understand why this is important, I'm just going to review really quickly what's called the quadrants. This is also part of the book, Easy Strength. I had a problem years ago, and I think some of you have had this problem. You had a team that on paper looked really good in the weight room and went 0-13 on the field of play. You have an athlete, the joke we have is looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. You have an athlete who's got all the numbers, yet performance drops. In high school, it's very common, senior year athletes in the track and field sports, you got a kid who threw 54 last year, shows up the next year with a huge bench, huge squat, and throws 52. Well, Pavel asked me a very famous, simple question. And the question was this. He said, what is the role of the strength coach? Well, I'm no dummy. It's to make people stronger. Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here. Well, Pavel did something most people don't do. Pavel asked the follow-up question. And the question was this: well, that's fine, Danny, but what is the impact of the strength coach? Folks, that's you. What's your impact? How do you measure it? Now, the answer I gave for a generation was, it depends. I don't want to face my maker. When I die and I'm up there and, hey, Dan, what's the impact of the strength coach? Hey, it depends. So I spent 3 years, and my poor assistants would see me constantly making little diagrams and stuff. Well, what I came up with was this. The impact depends on the number of qualities you need for your sport. Why I love track and field, to understand how certain things in strength help. Here's what I know in track and field. If I only have 2 qualities as a discus thrower, I have my technique and I've got strength. If I get stronger, I should throw farther. Is that true? Yes. In football, I get my team stronger, we should win every game. True? No. Football has more qualities. Football has more qualities. Soccer has more qualities. Special forces have more qualities. So I thought about this a lot, and I finally came up with this very simple way of looking at it. The number of qualities the athlete needs to master the sport, and the relationship to the absolute maximum of each quality, and I came up with this little quadrant. Up there in the top left is quadrant 4. I can't coach quadrant 4 activities. That's 1 or 2 qualities at the highest level humans can ever do. Usain Bolt, by the way, I'd like to see Jesse Owens and Usain Bolt in a race with the same track. That's just one of my things. But Usain Bolt ran a 9.79 100 meters. If you come up with a way to get him to 9.75, you're right. He only has really 1 quality. It's absolute speed. My powerlifting brothers and sisters, my Olympic lifting friends, they really probably only have 1, maybe 2 qualities they have to worry about. I can't coach those sports. They rely a lot on genetics and geography. I was at the Nationals in Olympic lifting one year, and I noticed something kind of funny about everybody else in the 110 kilo class. This was me, this was them. Then I went to a track meet, and I noticed something funny about discus throwers. This was me, this was them. DNA is a tough one to overcome. Geography is important. You got a kid this tall, nothing but fast twitch muscle fiber from Iowa, he's gonna be a great wrestler. Same kid in Bulgaria, he's gonna be an Olympic lifter. Quadrant 2 is the one that gets all the press. Lots and lots of qualities at the highest levels we can probably get. This is American football, this is special forces. My knock right now on fitness is we've gone from bodybuilding to everybody is a Navy SEAL. Quick insight for you. Does anyone know how to become a Navy SEAL? Join the Navy. There's no other way to do it. You can't train like a Navy SEAL. Do you guys know that? And yet, I tell you one thing, you can sell that though. People will come to your gym if you have a boot camp thing or something like that. Quadrant 1 is youth sports, very low level, not very good. And quadrant 3 is where 99% of us are. one or two qualities at a fairly low level. So to review, one quick point is that quadrant 2, even at the high school level, is pretty impressive. I go to these forums all the time, and these adult males will brag about lifts that a typical high school football player will do normally. And they think they're Superman. To play high school football today in the United States is very high levels of lots of qualities. Quadrant 3 is where you want to make your money, because that's where fat loss people come from. Fat loss is 2 things. This is one of my before and after pictures up there of one of the athletes. 3 weeks. That's 3 weeks. That's because he got sick on the 3rd day, and he had to miss 2 days, so it would have been to lose it quicker. But fat loss is easy. It's some kind of caloric restriction and inefficient exercise. That's all it is. You don't need to make it more complicated. There is a lesson you can learn from quadrant 3. Do what you say you need to do. And the thing that really changed my career working with professional sports is that sooner or later, everybody becomes quadrant 3. If you're working with a 31, 32-year-old NFL player, you have to almost train them like a grandmother. They get their work capacity from farmer walks and sleds and pushing cars. They might not be able to straighten their elbows. They certainly can't handle heavy back squats anymore. You train them. If they know how to play, our job is to keep them around one more season. So, the reason I have this quadrant discussion is it gives us clarity. If you are a football coach, you want to have tumbling, monkey bars, Olympic lifts, power lifts, kettlebell work, bodyweight work, hurdle work, and that whole world of locomotion. All kinds of things. Change. For a discus thrower, throw the discus, lift weights. I was a pretty good discus thrower. That's true. That's all it is. You don't have to make it more complicated. I go out to colleges now and I see these poor discus throwers. They spend 45 minutes to an hour doing all these things. They're doing skipping drills and dynamic touching drills, and that's great, but they didn't throw the discus that whole time. It's a pretty simple sport. Track is pretty easy, man. For quadrant 1, you want to teach those kids every single thing you can. It's interesting, both the late Tommy Kona, who just died 2 weeks ago, and John Powell said to me, John, said to me, once you move to a specific sport, if you're not world class in 3 years, you're not good enough. So if you do work with young athletes, and little Edna is specializing as a volleyball player, and she's 9 years old, make sure she plays other sports. If she's not world class by the time she's 12, she's not good enough, which is a hard thing for mommy and daddy to hear. This slide isn't in there, but one of the things that's been really hurting us in the last few years, and there's nothing against you guys who are power lifters. I like power lifters. I have great respect for them. I love racing them. And I love special forces and I love football. But football and powerlifting are crushing, and special forces training are crushing the industry for the last few years. You'll hear a powerlifter say things like, I know this, if I was their coach, they would squat more. Yes, and you're right, they would squat more, but would you win more football games? Would you throw the discus farther? Would you throw the shot farther? You have to be very careful about that. And there's nothing wrong with American football strength coaches, except you have so many qualities you need to teach. You can't take, tumbling has great value for a discus thrower. If you fall, it's going to help you. But tumbling for a discus thrower at late season has no value at all. In fact, it probably gets in the way. We have to cleanse ourselves sometimes of this thinking. I believe the correct way to program is the same way fighter pilots do things. Plan the mission, do the mission, talk about the mission. Or the Knowles Credo, plan the hunt, do the hunt. When we do any kind of program or thing, we set it up, we do it, and then we assess it. We assess it with the standing long jump, and we assess it with the farmer walk, and we also just use the eyeball test on a lot of things. Are we better? Are we better? Jim Gaffigan, I think, has the most brilliant insight on how I coach. Mexican food's great, but it's essentially all the same ingredients. So there's a way you'd have to deal with all these stupid questions. What is nachos? Nachos is tortilla with cheese, meat, and veggies. Oh, well, then what is a burrito? Tortilla with cheese, meat, and veggies. Well, what's a tostada? You have to say it that way. Tortilla with meat, cheese, and veggies. Well, then what is, look, it's all the same stuff. Why don't you say a Spanish word and I'll bring you something. When I coach people, I have nothing but special programs. Every single person who comes to me for my advice, I give them a hyper-specialized program. We do the fundamental human movements with appropriate reps and sets, with appropriate load. I see a hand back there. Oh, you're a jiu-jitsu. Oh, good. Martial, you're a fighter. I want you to do the fundamental human movements with appropriate sets and reps and appropriate load. Oh, folks, to me, it's all Mexican food. It's goblet squats, swings, deadlifts, press, pull. There's nothing new. Because the human body's the human body. And the more you focus on just getting that engine bigger and stronger, and then letting that athlete go out in the field of play and get better in the field of play, the more successful you and the athlete will be. Sometimes it works. Sometimes specificity works, but it's really hard to do. It's really hard to get specificity to work. So my programs are always individualized the exact same way. So let's now finish up with the rules of easy strength. This is interesting. Maybe you want to experiment with yourself. I believe, and maybe it was a mistake, that whenever I have my athletes do something, I always make sure I've done it first. That's not always a good idea. Because if it's a stupid idea, I'm the one who has to pay for it. If it's a good idea, I write a book about it. For the next 40 workouts, I simply want you to do the exact same thing. Usually, though, by workout 22, you're good. Pick just 5 exercises. One thing I am warning you about is be careful with the squat. Maintain the squat, but try to increase the hinge. Focus on the basic 5, which I shared with you earlier. The reps are minimal, usually around sets of 10. Sets of 20, 50, 75 for like swings or kettlebell snatches. If you have a great athlete, you're going to have a problem reining them in. They're always going to want to do more, which is why you know you have a great athlete. But having an athlete finish fresh and furious is hard because they always want to try one more. And the idea is we're to do that one more tomorrow. Now, in your handout, I give you all this extra information, okay? But I don't have time for today, but I just wanted you to see. And we're almost finished. I believe on this yin-yang symbol that the strength coach on this example would be the white side, and the technique coach would be the dark side of the yin-yang. One of the things I can do as a strength coach is train my athletes appropriately at the right heart rate. Is my heart rate 190 when I throw the discus? No. But your heart rate's 170 when you play soccer. So when you're doing drills in soccer, you better have that heart rate at 170. If you're a basketball coach, basketball games are won making free throws when tired. So shooting free throws fresh isn't the same as shooting free throws at the end of the game. So you've got to practice free throws with a high heart rate. Arousal control. The discus, you can't throw the discus like this. You have to throw the discus like this. Shot putters, are any in here? Okay, good. Good. The worst thing about having shot putters, I have to explain every joke. Shot putters can be like this. You can't throw the discus. So the discus throwing coach wants the discus throwers doing snatches, because the snatch is very much like the discus throw in arousal level and tension level. The clean and jerk is a lot more, which fits in better to the shot put. Now, it is true you can do the power lifts, which is in your notes. The power lifts and, mindless cardio and sleep, that's a good training program too. But I feel it's a job of the strength coach to match arousal and tension levels and heart rate in the weight room that's out there in the field of play. So every snatch we do in training is a lot like what we're doing out in the discus ring. I want them to practice that arousal level flying up and down. For football, if you have a quarterback, he has to have a different arousal level than a linebacker. As we close. The thing I like about Easy Strength is this: it supports that need for strength. You get strong in 40 days. If you need an athlete to get strong, why not just get them strong? How many adaptations can a human body do in any period of time? You're lucky if you get one. It can be used in conjunction with appropriate, all that tension level and arousal level. The thing I like best about it is it takes very little recovery. Recovering from 2 sets of 5 and 5 exercise takes almost no recovery at all, which is why many of my athletes actually get bigger on such a small amount of work. And of course, it gets you strong. If you need more insights, I've got a follow-up program on my website called Even Easier Strength. And then this young man did a really nice article on his explaining the whole thing to you. So don't buy the book, just read the websites. They're just as good, if not better. But I started off by talking about Freakonomics this morning, about don't fear the obvious as a coach. And if you want your people to get stronger, have them lift weights. I know that's so obvious. Have them lift weights and measure that by how much stronger they get, how much more load they have. Folks, I know it's simple. That's why we called it Easy Strength. If we called it Simple Strength, we wouldn't have sold the book. But I'm here to help you all day long. I know I went about 2 or 3 minutes over, and I apologize. I will be able to stay a little bit. I've had a little bit of a house issue. I got to get back home as soon as I can. My wife had to get her thyroid removed the other day, and we're having a tough 2 weeks at my house. Let's just say that. So I got to get back to her. But I will be here, and Coach will tell you, I'll answer every email and every phone call. I'm here to help you. Thank you very much.